Warm welcome to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 21st of May and continuing to build those ideas for the all-important summer forecast, the Atlantic hurricane season forecast, live stream this upcoming Sunday at 4 p.m. Hope you can join me for that. There will be a link in the description below the next couple of videos, so stay tuned for that. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Wanted to start off, we know obviously that we are going to see a return of the westerlies, weather conditions, lower pressure as we move towards the weekend. We're seeing the showers over the past 24 hours. We're going to continue to see that southwestern UK and parts of Ireland. But I want to draw your attention to the sea surface temperature anomalies over the Atlantic. Very interesting what's going on. Some of the warmest waters compared to average surrounds the UK and Ireland at the moment here. We've got quite a lot of cool waters extending off eastern North America, if you notice. So we've got this kind of warm east versus cool west in terms of the SSTs. What effect that warm water could have could be quite interesting because, yes, you could see increased rainfall and heavier rainfall, flash flood events, etc. But also we could see warmer temperatures as a consequence, both by day and by night. So that's off the NOAA site here, and you can see from a global perspective, pretty much you could argue that the warmest waters anywhere on the planet is surrounding the UK and Ireland at the moment. The reasons for that is simple. High pressure dominating, less in the way of unsettled conditions to stir up those cooler waters from below. So we've been kind of allowing, record or near record amounts of sunshine this spring to penetrate that surface and allow the warming to take place in the waters, both coastal waters as well as offshore of both the UK and Ireland. Another perspective is of sea DAS, and you can see here this is the temperature anomalies across the planet, also showing arguably among the warmest waters anywhere on the planet at the moment across the eastern side of the North Atlantic. We've got this cool waters in the western side of the basin. Even the change over the last 7 days has been notable surrounding the UK. Very slight cooling actually over the North Sea, and the reasons for that is northeasterly winds has been quite consistent with high pressure dominating to the north of the UK. We've been pulling our winds in from a northeasterly direction. They have been brisk, keeping the east coast of both Scotland and England on the fresher side. So that's been allowing a little bit of upwelling, but generally west of the UK and Ireland in particular, over the last 7 days, we've been seeing the waters warming up. So like I said, we've got this the return of weather conditions, a godsend if you're a gardener, if you're a farmer, if you don't necessarily like just consistent sunny conditions. I know it's a mixture of feelings towards this wet spell coming up, but I think pretty much the majority of us would agree that the place needs a good soaking. The problem is that as we move towards the early portions of June, given the Madden-Julian oscillation, and we'll look at that in a second, there is a possibility that the wet weather is relatively tempered by the fact that the MJO trying to move into the West Pacific could instigate stronger high pressure building back northwards, pushing wetter weather up towards northwest Highlands and perhaps even up towards Iceland as we move towards the next couple of weeks here. So the beginning of summer, there is the possibility of seeing higher pressure building back in once again. We'll look at that in a little second. But in terms of the rainfall off the ECMWF, this is total cumulative precipitation now through the first 3 or 4 or 5 days of June. You can see here that we are increasing the moisture across the south of England. Still very little in the way of moisture as of later tomorrow into Friday. You can see here that we've got some showers developing here, spreading some moisture up the eastern side of England. There's parts of eastern England and Scotland that has seen, very little in the way of rain, not just in May, but throughout the course of this spring. I think my station here, north of Inverness, east of the Torridon, northwest Highland region, a little bit of a rain shadow effect where I'm located. There's only been about 72 millimetres of rain throughout the course of the spring, 72 millimeters throughout the course of this year so far, and there's only been a half a millimeter fallen in the last 2 weeks or so. So we're pushing 3 weeks without much in the way of rain at all here. And that's been the case across many areas. But you can see here as we play through the course of the weekend, we're increasing that moisture. Western areas in particular of England, Wales and Scotland is going to see the majority of the rain. Less in the way of rain the further east you go over, whether it be the Cairngorms, the Grampians, the Pennines. East of there, we're not seeing as much in the way of wet weather because the winds are coming back in from the Atlantic. But you can see here all the way through till the 5th of June, we've got plenty of moisture coming into the southwest of England, West Wales, northwestern England, in excess of 100 millimetres of rainfall in quite a few upslope areas. If we look at Scotland, you can see the same idea here. Play through the loop. We start to pick up the moisture as we move out of Friday into Saturday. Frontal system associated with low pressure up towards Iceland. It's going to bring in the first rainfall. Through the course of the weekend, it looks as if the ECMWF has anywhere from 10 to as much as 40 millimetres of rainfall, and highest amounts in upslope areas facing the Atlantic, less in the way of rainfall the further east you go. But it looks as if, according to the ECMWF, we are really starting to build the moisture up as we move through the final week, 10 days of May and through the first week of June. Some very significant amounts of rain in excess of 300 millimetres fallen in the west-facing mountain areas of Scotland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland as well. So very interesting stuff in terms of the ECMWF providing a decent soaking rainfall, which is very much needed, obviously, and it looks as if that is pretty good news. Looking at the GFS model then for the same period, again you can see here less in the way of rainfall. It's not quite as aggressive in the east as the ECMWF, but certainly the further west you go, we're in excess of 100 millimetres as opposed to 300 millimetres. So the GFS resolution isn't quite as good as the ECMWF, but nevertheless, it's indicating west is best in terms of rainfall. Now, I wanted to show you the Madden-Julian oscillation here. This is quite an interesting scenario, and you can see that it is trying to edge out of the inner circle, which is the null phase, less active, less influential on the weather patterns out with the tropics. The further out the Madden-Julian oscillation, this line goes away from the inner circle, the more influence it can have on the mid to high latitude pattern. So the greens represent the forecast of the GFS operational, and the ensemble, should I say, I think it is. It's heading into phases 4 and 5 in a little bit more of a prominent way, where if you watch the Tropical Outlook yesterday, the first of the season, I mentioned about how we're increasing the convection over the Indian Ocean. That's increasing the rainfall over India, Southeast Asia, the Indonesia region as well. But you can see here as we play through, this is off the GFS ensemble, and this could be critical, could be important when it comes to the start of summer 2025 for western areas of Europe. Now look at the greens here, representing upward motion, enhancing rainfall potential over the parts of the Indonesia region and the Indian Ocean. But you can see here as we play through towards the end of the month, we're really starting to build the convection here over the eastern side of the hemisphere, and we're seeing where the reds are showing sinking motion. We're seeing that in the western hemisphere here. So rising motion over the eastern hemisphere, sinking over the western hemisphere. What that could do is that can actually temper any potential development, early season tropical activity, for example, in the Atlantic basin. But we're also increasing the probability of spin-ups and even some early development over the West Pacific and parts of the eastern Indian Ocean. We're also increasing the onset of the 2025 monsoon season in South Asia as well. So interesting stuff going on here. But what influence, what does that mean for our part of the world, you may ask? Well, if you look at the latest of the GFS ensemble, I want to draw your attention to the upper pattern here. So we'll look through the next week to 10 days or so, and what happens is we lose the area of high pressure that has been so dominant. We've got a little feature that's been exiting the near continent, crossing the UK and Ireland, hence why we've seen the showers and thunderstorms develop, some localised downpours. Very welcome news for parts of England, Wales and Ireland. That little feature then will drift its way eastwards, or should I say westwards, but we're starting to see more fundamental changes. We've got quite a deepening trough dropping out of Scandinavia. That's forcing high westwards, pulling our air in from the north-northeast. We're actually driving in some fairly chilly air over the UK and Ireland, and with clear skies and light winds, by the way, we are going to see pockets of frost more widely, possibly down as far as northern England, but rural parts of Scotland could see freezing or slightly below over the next few days, thanks to this little dislodge of Arctic air into the UK atmosphere here over the next 24 to 48 hours. Then it's all change as we move towards the end of the work week and beginning of the weekend. We've got low pressure moving up towards Iceland, associated fronts, really going to decrease the pressure field over the UK and Ireland, increase the cloud production and showers, thunderstorms, longer spells of rain. We're basically reverting back to a more classic late May, early June pattern. High pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. We're pulling our air in from the west. But I want to just keep in mind what's taking place within the tropics. That the pulse of enhanced convection moving through the maritime continent, Indonesia, between Australia and Southeast Asia, moving its way eastwards into the West Pacific. That can lead to higher pressure building back over Western Europe again. And I don't think there's much of a coincidence here if we just go back slightly here so you can see it better and play through this loop. Remember, this is off the GFS ensemble. Play through this loop. You can see that the high pressure is trying to build back in over the UK and Ireland, forcing low pressure and weather systems up towards Iceland. Continue to play through this loop. You can see here that the high almost regains control. Not quite the same levels as what we've seen so far, but that is quite an interesting situation developing. Now, if the high can shift just a little bit to the east, lower pressure out towards the Atlantic, keeping in mind the warm waters surrounding the UK and Ireland, we may have the potential here towards the back half of week 1, week 2 of June, the potential of a surge of hotter air. And given how dry the soils are, we could see some reasonably hot temperatures as we move into the kind of day 10 through 15 of June. I think there's a possibility, given what's going on within the tropics, given the potential that the models are indicating, and also the surrounding warm waters and the dry ground. Yes, we're going to see wet weather over the next week to 10 days or so here. That is going to help with giving the topsoils at least a bit of a soaking. But it's fundamentally, you're not going to just eradicate what's been taking place over the last 6 weeks in a week's time. We're not going to see that amount of rain that will simply soak the soils, increase the levels of water vapor within the atmosphere, which then limits the sun's ability to heat the air. We're going to still see the effects of this dry pattern, and I think the combination of the dry soils, the warm surrounding sea surface temperatures, and the potential atmospheric pattern may lead to what could be a hot spell in the month of June. This is my thinking overall anyway. Now, in terms of rainfall, the reasons why I'm concerned that this is a relatively tempered spell of wetter weather. If we look at the upcoming 7 days of the GFS ensemble, yes, we've got wet conditions, especially across northwestern areas, a little bit drier than average across the south of Ireland, perhaps the southwest of England and Wales. But play through this loop. This is rainfall anomalies, obviously. Play through it. Yes, it's wet north, drier south. But look how the pattern becomes drier once again because of the high the models are seeing building back into play once again. Looking at the CFS V2, let's have a look at temperature anomalies, by the way. Upcoming 5 days, you can see here that we are cooling things off with that little tongue of milder, colder air coming in from the north. Then with lower pressure moving up towards Iceland, we're actually dragging in some kind of polar maritime air. End of the day, 6 through 10, we go slightly warmer than average. Day 11 through 15, we're firmly warmer than average. Looking at the CFSV2 then, see what it's showing here in terms of the weeklies. We'll look initially at the 500s. This is how things are looking week 1. And you can see here that the core of the trough is actually over Central Europe and Scandinavia. We've got high pressure to the southwest. Into week 2, there's the high then slipping into the southern UK, southwestern portions of Europe. Again, keeping in mind that eastward progress of the into the maritime continent, enhancing convection. We're also increasing mountain torque over the Himalayas. That is then increasing the Pacific jet stream. And this is all having a ripple effect down the road. Look at this here. Week 3, 4th of June through the 11th of June. You can see here that higher pressure is becoming more dominant and focusing over the heart of Europe. Now, keep in mind how dry Europe is becoming. So there is heat wave potential in what is being portrayed by the models. And this all makes sense, in my opinion. In terms of rainfall then, this is how things are looking. Week 1, wetter than average. Week 2, wetter than average. So it's holding on to that slightly wetter than average signal a little bit longer than the GFS ensemble. Into week 3, it's starting to see slightly less in the way of wet weather here. Week 4, you can see wetter north and the majority of England and Wales drier than average. And this is what the Met Office, not the Met Office here. Let's look at this is the multi-model run for the month of June of the Copernicus. And you can see here for the month of June, it's indicating wetter north, arguably slightly drier south. It's not really got any signal here in the southwestern and central Europe. We've got a drier east of Europe, wetter up towards northern UK, up towards Iceland. That would indicate to me lower pressure to the north, higher pressure to the south here. Potential of hotter, drier conditions across England and Wales, maybe slightly less warm, slightly less settled across the northwest of Scotland, for example, here. That's quite a typical classic summer type pattern. So, yeah, lots of reason to stick around here. Summer forecast coming up this weekend. I hope you're enjoying the content. We also will have the global weather report probably this Saturday. That is the plan at the moment anyway. But the content continuing to get thrown out there 6-7 days a week. And I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing here. Freely available. And if you're new to the channel, a warm welcome. Please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow with more. Bye for now.